We're talking with Katie Little. Katie Little is a fascinating character who I'm keen to get to know better. We're going to talk about other stuff later, but Katie, this is the first time I've met you, and my motto is kind of is stay curious and be kind.
Cool.
And I'm curious about you.
Yeah, I'm curious about you as well. All good things. I've heard all good things about you, so that's awesome.
Oh, that's comforting. I try not to make things worse when I meet people, but it does happen. Katie, I know that you live right in Sydney.
Yeah.
I know you've got kids.
Yeah, 3 kids. Yeah.
How old?
So Tom's turning 16 on the weekend, which is gorgeous. And then my daughter's 13, going on 23, and Hunter's 8 years old. So he's my surprise.
When did you know that you wanted to write and that was a form of expression that you favoured?
Always want to be a writer. I always want to be the person wearing black in the corner, smoking cigarettes, drinking black coffee, just writing, sardonic comments and just watching how everything went on. Like that was my dream kind of thing.
Since you can remember.
Yeah, forever. Absolutely. And I think I'm a lot like my father, because my father always wanted to be a writer as well. So, and to be honest with you, I find it interesting. I did have a difficult relationship with my father, but the way we connected with each other was really a lot of the time through books. So he'd sort of come along every now and then and go, I think you're old enough to read this now. And he'd give me sort of, Truman Capote, short stories, Breakfast at Tiffany's, read the novella or whatever. Or I think you're old enough to read this now, give me Gone with the Wind, which was this thick. And I was, very sort of small, and I'd read it almost to prove that I was kind of mature enough to get through this book. I think that was really important for my father and my relationship. We really bonded and talked a lot through books. So I suppose maybe that contributed to it as well.
I'm lucky enough to be talking with Katie Little. She's written a stunning, I suppose we could call it a memoir called Catch a Falling Star, a story about growing up with Jeannie Little. Katie is Jeannie's daughter. I didn't really want to bring that up at the start because I see her as Katie, not as Jeannie's daughter. But having written a book, and such a stellar book, there's a lot of people that want to write their story and that think they've got a book in them. What wisdom would you have to impart, having written a really, really stunning memoir? I commend you on it. I finished it. I finished it 2 nights ago, and I started it 4 nights ago.
Oh, that's anything anyone can say to me. That's
so maybe when I send you a copy of my sister's book, I'll send you a copy of mine, and you can sign it and send it back.
That'd be fantastic.
That would be really amazing. I've got 1 copy, and I'd love you to sign it.
Thank you.
And I encourage anyone listening or reading to read it. It's insightful on so many levels, and it's so much more than a story about Jeannie Little's daughter.
It's a really black human memoir, and I think the advice would be, someone said to me, just pretend no one's ever going to read it, and that freed me up to go, right, yeah, I can write. I'm just writing this for my own pure enjoyment. And funnily enough too, because I'm trying to get my head around doing a screenplay version of it now, and so I thought I'll read it from start to finish again, and I was reading it going, I can't believe I've written this stuff and it's published.
And
wow,
that's why it worked. That's why it worked, because you weren't writing for an audience. You were writing it as if to no one. That's such good advice for anyone trying to write their story, because so often they're trying to write a memoir of a certain length, or they're trying to put it into a certain format. Really, you've just got to get the story out and then worry about how you're going to present it and which format you're going to put it in and all that kind of stuff. What's the key to finishing a book well?
I think the key for me, because I really did want to write the book, and I tried and tried and tried. When I finally got on a roll with it, I discovered that, number one, I can't write at home, because there's too many things to do here, sort of thing. There's always a machine going ping, I'll just hang out the washing, something else going ping, I'll just unpack the dishwasher, the phone rings, something happened. So getting out of the house and writing in a place where I wasn't going to be interrupted was really important.
So that's what you found. That's what you found to work after failing plenty of times. Can we explore the failures, because that's where the lessons are? I mean, I've tried to write my whole life consistently. I'm 43 now, and I've only just learned how to become really consistent and write most days. Well, talk to me about the times it didn't work and the times it failed. When did you start trying it? How long did it take to find a process that worked?
I think the biggest life lesson for me, like I always wanted to write. I was always setting up desks for myself and sitting down to write. And I was really writing fiction, and I was writing short stories, and I've still got ideas in my head for things like that too. But for me, I'd get into it and I'd think, what's the point of this? What is the real point of it? And now I look back when, after Mum got sick and I did all these sort of, interviews about, Mum getting diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and someone took me out for coffee and said, oh yeah, what do you do? Blah, blah. And I said this and that, I blog and I write. And they went, you should write a memoir about growing up with your mum. And it was like this light bulb went off in my head and I went, yes, that's what I have to do. And so the reason I really wrote the book, I think too, was because I wanted to go back in time and relive my childhood and remember my mum, how she used to be when I was a kid, because she was the most wonderfully fun mum. And I had all these crazy fun memories that I just wanted to relive all of it. And I thought that's the way my mum wants me to remember her, not all this depressing, horrible, awful clusterfuck of just terrible crap that our whole family just fell apart and everyone became fighting and awful and revolting. So for me, it was really healing for me to be able to go back in time and relive all this stuff. But now that, then I finally finished it, I couldn't get a publisher, finally found one, had to write a different ending, had to edit it myself, and I just kept going with it. So, but now looking back, I think, of course I'm a memoir writer. That's what I love. I love memoir. I'm always reading, nonfiction and memoir. So I think the problem was that I kept trying to write fiction and it wasn't my genre. You're
a creative, ebullient, effervescent, kind of outgoing personality. You're quick to find the joy. You're committed. You're a really committed mum who treats her kids as adults rather than kids, talks to them as if they've got a brain on them. Yep. What separate to your writing, for anyone watching or listening, what else do you get up to, and what else makes you you? Because I want to get a firmer picture of you before I talk about your family.
I think the interesting thing is when my book came out, people were contacting me. One woman contacted me and said, I always loved your mum because she was a punk. And I thought, really? That's a weird description. And I think because in my head, I've always associated a punk with, someone who hang out with sort of Sid Vicious or something in England and, wore safety pins through their ears. But the more I thought about it, I went, you're right. And two people have actually described my mum as that. And she really was. And she had, I've got very similar things to do with her. And I think I'm definitely a punk as well. I just want to push boundaries everywhere. I sort of describe myself as a lot like my mum, but a cheap imitation kind of thing. Because I think, mum had a real lightness about her and she loved fashion and that stuff. But her true gift was always really encouraging people to really be themselves. And I think that's why she was sort of so important to housewives who are often stuck at home and lose a bit of their own identity with what they're doing, and gay men as well, who were really fighting to kind of be, valued and appreciated in society. So that was mum. And so I think, I'd love to say that I'm a punk as well. And it doesn't matter if I'm doing it through.
I think that's at the heart of the punk ethos, is be
yourself.
I
do too. Yeah.
I mean, the punk ethos is be yourself.
Absolutely.
Be uncompromising in doing so, and don't listen to the establishment and forge your own way.
Yeah.
There's so many societal expectations, and I think expectations are a shortcut to disappointment.
Well, exactly, because it makes you, I don't know, maybe second guess yourself. Life is, you've got to kind of muddle through it a bit, and the less, expectations people put on you, the better, really. And so also too, I think creativity is my number one thing. That was always, I learnt that from my mum as well, that creativity reigns supreme. And we shared in the terrace house. She had her sewing room on the top floor next to my bedroom. And so every now and then, like all kids, I'd go and say, Mum, I'm bored. And she'd be horrified. That was like the worst thing you could say. And she'd sort of say, right, this is ridiculous. Here's an empty ice cream container and some wool and some instructions on how to make a macrame pot hanger. Off you go, kind of thing, and send me off. So, I say to my kids too, if it's holidays or whatever, and they'll come and say, I'm bored. It's like, it's okay. Being bored is fine. It's an uncomfortable feeling. But if you're creative, and we're all human, we're all creative. Boredom is like a natural part that I think you've just got to push through and go, okay, I'm bored, but you just got to keep working at it, and push through the uncomfortable bit until you achieve something. And you don't know where you're going to go with it, but unless you give it a chance, you just don't know.
My motto is be curious, stay kind. And the antidote to boredom is curiosity. How important is curiosity to you?
Oh, hugely. I mean, that's the thing that blows me away with doing the music, which, only happened because Tim couldn't do the photography. And we started really, that's what brought us together in the first place was music. So we were like, this is really exciting. We didn't expect for this, but it just blows me away the number of people who come up to me and say, God, you're 46, you're launching a music career now, sort of thing. And it's like, well, yeah, like what else? What else am I going to do? I'm not going to do it because what am I meant to be old now? Like that's ridiculous. I've still got tons of stuff to do, and stand-up comedy, and I still love writing. I want to get into films and things like that too. Like there's so much to do. Like
my sister became a novelist at 50.
Exactly. Yeah, that just kind of blows me away. And I think, gosh, I don't care what it is, if it's just something that motivates people to move or get inspired or sort of, just do something. I just think that's awesome. Let's do it.
When you can be loose enough and free enough for it to determine you rather than for you to determine it. Do you feel similarly?
Yeah, and especially with the music, I'm finding it so fun too, because there's certain things like for the music now too, writing, it was me sitting in the daggy muffin break, just writing for hours. With the music, Tim will sometimes start something, I'll sit down, rearrange it, whatever, or he'll have an idea and I'll just, pop it into my, headphones and go off skateboarding. And I'll just be skateboarding around and around the sort of basketball court up there, just going, I really need to, get the vibe for this and find the lyrics for it. And it's hard not to come up with lyrics that aren't cliched. And I'll try lots of things and I'll come back and I don't know, I have a bit of a smoke every now and then. I'm not really into drinking so much, but I do think that it's a sacred herb. And literally I don't indulge too much and stuff. I just wish everyone would get over the stigma to do with marijuana. It could be bloody legal.
You've just helped us with that stigma. And do you find that opens you up when it comes to your
music?
Yeah,
absolutely. And I just think it's, if you're, like we said before, if you're disciplined and you're doing the work and you're not doing it as an escapism, you're doing it to enhance the work that you've already done, sometimes it just kind of lets you get out of, I don't know, whatever it is. I don't know, you've done all the kind of groundwork and the foundation sort of thing. And then anything you can do is just an experiment to see if it works. That's what creativity is. When Mum, did die, and suddenly I thought I'll organise a memorial, and it started off just being, I'll just be the kids and I will read something. Tom can play a piece on the piano. I'll invite a couple of, close sort of family friends and stuff. And then for some reason I thought, Mum needs to be recognised as one of Australia's first female comedians. And I got this idea in my head that she had to be, the Australian Story had to do a segment on her. And so I started agitating to do that. And then that happened. And so I had a really young researcher ringing me saying, who's your mum? And why is she important? So I end up having these very long, half-hour plus conversations saying, no, it's fine. I'm doing all this stuff and I haven't even grieved for my mum yet, but that's cool because and it was actually perfect timing because I was in the process of planning the memorial and suddenly made me think, oh, this is bigger than just, I need to get some big people on board who are going to stand up, Wendy Harmer to say, how significant Mum's comedy was. She wasn't just ditzy, zany Jeannie Little. She was intelligent. She was writing new material every week, things like that, how important she was to the gay community, especially, when the AIDS pandemic hit as well, things like that. So it really made me think of my mum's life story in a much different way. So I think, you know, it's been crazy. Mum only died sort of 4 months ago, and I did feel like I was just kind of running through. Memorial, tick, done that. You know, people would contact me saying, "Oh, we were tuning in from Bangkok and Rio and Seville and London." I'm thinking, this is just the world we live in is really remarkable. So, and then Australian Story, you know, finally sort of only aired.
That was huge. That was huge. Yeah.
It was amazing, and I can't believe they managed to fit all that into 30 minutes.
Did they?
Wow.
Has your life changed since that's aired?
I think the thing. I think I did the main interview for Australian Story only a couple of days after the memorial, and I was still sort of running on adrenaline and exhausted. And it was 6 hours. I was saying it wasn't an interview; it was an interrogation. You know, and they were really very full-on questions, I think. And so I knew the questions I'd been asked, and I started, you know, for the next few days after, I'd sort of wake up going, oh, they asked me that question. Oh, that's going to be terrifying, because anyone who's had experience with TV knows that, you know, when it comes down to editing, it can very easily look very different, or depending on what they choose to leave in and stuff. So I was really terrified. And then finally sort of got to a few, you know, about the week leading up to Australian Story, and suddenly thought, you know what, I'm not scared about this anymore. It's also my life as well. And I'm at the point in my life where I'm sick of being, you know, having anxiety and freaking out about what I'm meant to say, not meant to say, or any of this stuff. And I thought it's time for me to claim my story as well. And little did I know when Australian Story aired that they didn't only just tell Mum's story, they also told mine as well. And so all these people were messaging me saying, "Oh, I was crying. Were you crying?" And I said, "No, I wasn't crying. I was having a glass of champagne saying, this is incredible. You know, I've lived this for, you know, over 10 years, and now people have sort of got a glimpse of what's been going on in my life. Like it's been a massive decade, really."
How do you end up reconciling the fact that what would happen if I didn't have the opportunities that my parents' fame provided me? Does that lead to an imposter syndrome of sorts?
I think, see, there's certain things that I noticed now, like when I was getting dressed up before, and I thought, oh, I'm going to put on tons of makeup, I'm going to wear sequins and all this stuff. Like as a kid, and even in sort of my 20s and stuff too, I didn't wear makeup at all. And through sort of motherhood too, I often, you know, just look like I look back and I go, God, I look like a slob. What was I thinking? But I actually think it was me rebelling.
Trying not to be Jeannie Little.
Exactly. I didn't want to be anything like my mum.
Of course you didn't.
I didn't want to be sort of put in the same basket. And also too, as a kid, I was very attuned to who was drawn to my mum by this crazy kind of fame sort of idea. So for me, I kind of thought, if I look like a total dag and someone still wants to be my friend, then that's a real person as well. So I think it's only been the last sort of 5 or so years that I've really embraced thinking, I'm going to get dressed up and look a bit fashionable and fun. But there's certain things like that, which I never even realized I was doing, that only now I sort of go, gee, that's interesting. I'm obviously still processing and dealing with things.
This time has flown.
It has. I've had such a blast.
Oh, it's been so good chatting with you. I really like you. This is the book. It's called Dear Mum. It's a collection of letters to mums from notable notables. We've got some interesting letters from kids of famous people, most notably from Sonny Lunig, the son of cartoonist Michael Lunig, and Katie Little, daughter of Jeannie Little, who did only just pass very recently. I thank you from, as Molly would say, the heart of my bottom, because when we found out about your mum, our conversations about writing in this book had progressed. And I said to my team, don't just leave her alone, let her grieve. Let's not push. This is the last thing that I want to interrupt her with. And yet still, during the maelstrom of grief and losing such a key part of your life, you were able to deliver us your letter to your mum at a time when I would not expect anyone to do such a thing. I would just want to tell you, not just from me, but on behalf of our team behind the scenes, we couldn't believe that you were still thinking of others at such a time. And I wanted to pass on not just my thanks, but our entire office wanted to send all their love for actually taking the time during a time where there was no reasonable expectation of you to do so.
I think everyone thought, oh, you must have expected it. I was not at all. And to be honest, the idea of mum going on living for another 10 years was more horrific than I think I could have dealt with. So the fact that she did die was an absolute blessing. And so then, of course, absolutely, gosh, I feel really honoured to be part of what you're doing, and your book is fantastic, the idea.
I think you touch in your letter, and we're going to hopefully hear Katie read a copy of the letter very soon. But I just wanted to add before we do that that we've touched on the reality in this book that sometimes it can be a good thing for people to die. Sometimes it can provide a great relief. Sometimes, and I don't say this insensitively, sometimes dying is a good thing.
Yes.
In my sister's case, her pain had prolonged for so long.
Yep.
She was ready.
Yes.
You know, and in the end, her dying was, of course, a bad thing.
Yeah.
But both a good thing at the same time. And that's why I was so keen to get together and chat with you, because we have a denialistic approach about when it comes to death in this country, and I want people to feel okay to say, I'm glad that she's gone, and that it was a good thing that she died, without people thinking that it means that you didn't want her alive.
Absolutely. Yeah, because the thing that killed me the most was thinking mum wouldn't want to live like this. So that's hard.
Without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we have the pleasure of hearing Katie Little read to us about her beautiful mum, Jeannie Little, recently passed. Thank you so much, darling, whenever you're ready.
Dear mum, I remember back to my childhood when I shared the top floor of our big, tall terrace house, my bedroom beside your sewing room, both of us working side by side, each in their own crazy creative mess. Your room littered with fabric and paper patterns spread out across the floor. You kneeling perhaps, holding pins between your lips, I can still remember that, and the lovely snip, snip, snip sound as your huge, heavy metal scissors cut through the fabric. Still hear that in my head too. The thin carpet always scattered with pins. I had to watch my step in your room. The radio on talkback and your sewing machine running late into the night, such a comforting sound. Pages of ideas torn from magazines, the wall a patchwork of inspiration pinned straight onto Dad's expensive wallpaper. Projects on the go in every corner, a dress hand sewn with flattened milk bottle caps or prawn crackers, outfits made of garbage bags, organza shredded to look like ostrich feathers, every wardrobe in the house chock full of sequins and sparkles, transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary everywhere you went. It was like growing up backstage in the theatre. You were always so practical at home in your simple black jeans and t-shirt, so busy you never sat still, always going at lightning speed. Your baked potatoes were the best, if only because you turned the oven up as high as it would go to speed along the cooking, and they'd literally implode in the heat. Likewise, your spag bowl that sustained me for days on end was never meant to be meatballs, of course, but you were just too busy to even stir the pot. To keep on top of your life, everything had to be made double quantity, twice as fast, loads of washing brought in off the line, bundled onto your back the size of a small elephant. Your strength was incredible, your energy unstoppable, your enthusiasm never waned. And then the nights you and Dad went out, transforming yourself into the most glamorous, larger-than-life being that everyone adored, the house quiet and still after you left, the air heavy with exotic perfume. The best thing about you as a mum was that you always treated me as an equal, never a child, taught me all the things you thought of utmost importance. I could have fixed false eyelashes by the age of 6, mixed drinks for guests when I could barely lift the bottles of spirits. And in our house where there were only 3 of us, Dad being the sensible one most of the time, you were my ally, secretly plotting and planning parties, scheming up crazy ideas with me, fighting banality at every turn. And thank God we had all those fun times. I always thought we'd get more time together. Little did I know how truly precious my childhood with you was. The last years of your life, 11 years in a bed living with Alzheimer's, really sucked for me, mostly because I knew that was never how you would have wanted to live, and that was hard for me to live with. But thankfully, you seemed blissfully unaware, and that was the one blessing that got me through. I just wish so much that you could have enjoyed being a grandmother. My kids you would adore to bits, and they'd make you laugh, I know. we would have had such mad fun together. But life is a funny thing, and sometimes I think dreams take more than one lifetime to realise. I know you took great inspiration from your Scottish mother, my namesake, who I never got to know either, but I know her spirit lived on through you as yours does through me. And every day I try my best to live by the morals you brought me up to value, and hope one day I will inspire my children to do the same, to remember always how precious life is, to follow your heart and aim for the sky, and to prioritise joy and creativity always. Thanks for being so unconventional and for being the best mum ever. I can say now that I've grown up a bit, that you really were one in a million. Love, your daughter, Katie.
One of my favorite letters. I'm just gonna re-go over the words, the sentences that really got me. Fighting banality at every turn.
Yes.
I mean, that is great advice for all of us. Find the beige and run away as fast as you can.
Yes.
But also, and sometimes I think dreams take more than one lifetime to realize.
Yeah.
It's not really until she's gone that you can start dreaming like she did, you know. And
it's true, isn't it? Yeah.
And
you're too close, and then it's like a relay race, and you think, oh, I've given the baton. That's right. I'm going to run with it.
If anyone watching or listening, take what you will from today's conversation. There's more than enough for any type of person to grab onto. But I think it's in keeping in spirit with this conversation. I encourage everyone listening to stay curious and to be kind, and indeed to fight banality at every turn. Katie Little, thank you.
Thank you. That's been the best, most fun. I don't even know how long we've been talking for.
I don't know. I think I've taken you over time. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Thank you, darling.
Bye.